Welcome to Today in Prophecy Daily News in 15 minutes or less. Think of this, Acts chapter 17, the passage where the Apostle Paul is addressing the leaders. He says in verse 30, "Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent." And get this, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. I look at this and think, this is absolutely profound. Coming from the New Testament, in the book of Acts, God says, God the Father has ordained the day that God the Son will judge the world. The very one who rose from the dead is proof that Jesus is coming again. Yet it's denied by so many within the churches, but there it is. Acts chapter 17, verse 31, God says that judgment day is coming. And we are watching so many different things develop, especially as we look at Israel. I think of Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3, where the Bible lets us know that all the world will turn against Jerusalem and also the people of Israel. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, that day is coming. The 70th week of Daniel is a settled time for your people, that's the Jewish people, and for your holy city, the city of Jerusalem. And folks, we are watching everything develop, as many of you know. Some of you are with us when we were over in Israel. I finally returned after Israel. I went over to Jordan and then came back from Israel rather late. But it was just an amazing time to be over in the land of Israel. But friends, I'm going to tell you, I saw heaviness of heart upon the Israelis there that I've never seen before. In fact, I was just there in March, and what I've seen from March until now, even with the hostages being released, was indeed a heaviness, but also a resilience of the Jewish people that is taking place over in Israel. Indeed, we live in remarkable times, at a time when we read something like this. Check this out. Palestinian state coming. Look at this first article we have here. Look at this. New U.S. plan for Gaza stabilization force includes possible path to Palestinian state. A new U.S. draft resolution for the UN Security Council outlines the creation of an international stabilization force in Gaza and Israeli withdrawal tied to disarmament benchmarks and what Washington calls a credible path towards Palestinian statehood. Now, we've been hearing about this, but as we read on, there's a lot more to say here. The United States is preparing to bring a new resolution to the UN Security Council that would establish an international stabilization force in the Gaza Strip. But in the latest draft, Washington also emphasizes the possibility of what it calls a credible path to self-determination and a Palestinian state. Let that sink in. A Palestinian state. The draft is based on the 20-point plan presented by President Trump and on his declaration for peace and sustainable prosperity signed by the president and regional leaders at the Sharm el-Sheikh Summit. It states that the United States will create a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for a prosperous coexistence. All right, let's work through this part alone, and then I want to bring you to a little bit more of the updated news that keeps on coming in. Okay, while we were in Israel, somebody presented or suggested that Israel, there will never be a two-state solution within Israel. It's never going to happen. And so I jumped in and answered that, and I said, well, actually, there already was a two-state solution. I don't believe the Bible teaches that there won't be a two-state solution, although some of my colleagues say there never will be a two-state solution. So let's work through that. There actually already has been a two-state solution. In 1917, we have the Balfour Declaration, which was, with the Balfour Declaration, the intent was to have the Jews a homeland in their original homeland, part of the Zionist movement, that would include the modern state of Israel and also the modern state of Jordan. However, in 1922, with the British Mandate, Britain decided to give everything that was east of the Jordan River over to the Jordanians, make an Arab state that was also known as a Palestinian state back then. So that was a two-state solution. It took that land, it divided it. Everything west of the Jordan River was to be for the Jews. Everything east of the Jordan River, which was 77% of the land that was originally intended for the Jews, given over to the Arabs, in effect creating a Palestinian state, which was also known as, is also known as Jordan. All right, that's in 1922. Then again, in 1947, Britain, with the British mandate, they decided to just relieve themselves from their responsibilities as the mandatory, and they turned it over to the League of Nations, or the UN, and they divided the land of Israel that was given to the Jews even more, and the Jews even had less land that was originally intended to them from 1922. So you already had two-state solutions by the time you roll around to 1948, when there is a declaration, a UN declaration where Israel is recognized as having its own country, or its own state. So you already had two-state solutions by that time. All right, then you roll around to what the Bible says that is coming in the future, and this is from Daniel chapter 11, verse 15, where the Bible, Daniel, let me get over here, Daniel chapter 11, verse 39, then he shall act against the strongest fortresses. This is talking about Antichrist. The Antichrist will act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, little g, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory. He shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. All right, what does that mean, divide the land for gain? It is specifically referring to the land of Israel. He will divide the land of Israel for gain. For what? For political gain. So that day is coming. The people who are on board with him will be blessed. That's the other thing that this teaches. He shall cause them to rule over many. Those who are ruling with Antichrist at the time when Israel will be divided for gain. So that is still coming in the future. There will be a two-state solution. I know a lot of my colleagues say there never will be, but listen, there already has been two just since 1917, and there will be another official one when Antichrist comes on the scene. Okay, we have that, and I'm going to tell you something. The pressure upon Israel in this regard, a two-state solution, is increasing exponentially. Israel is doing what they can to say, hey, we're going to exercise our sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Trump, of course, you've already seen this. This is several weeks ago. Trump said, if Israel does that, then all U.S. support will be removed from Israel. But the pressure is growing on Israel to enter into a two-state solution. By the way, I don't know if you had an opportunity to do this yet or not, but you can watch my interview that I had in Jerusalem at the JNS studio with Alex Trayman, the chief editor of JNS. And then tomorrow, I have Dr. Hillel Newman also coming to you from Jerusalem. Check out that interview. It's absolutely fantastic. All right. Now, as we go back to this, let's think of this, a two-state solution. Let me tell you something. Daniel chapter 11 certainly seems to teach there will be a two-state solution. Antichrist will bless the people who are on board with him, and he's going to do it for whatever his political gain is. Okay, now as we look at this next article, this is regarding Turkey. This says U.S.-Turkey axis emerges. Ankara eyes Gaza deployment, deepens role in Syria deal. Washington hosts rare trilateral meeting with Syria and Turkey on integrating Kurdish forces and stabilizing Gaza. Erdogan officials push for greater role in post-war Gaza amid resistance from Egypt and Israel as debate over multinational force intensifies. Okay, now with that, check this one out. As we work through this, Turkey hosted a meeting of foreign ministers from Muslim countries on November 3 of 2025 in Istanbul to discuss the implementation and challenges of a U.S.-backed peace plan for Gaza. Turkey, remember this, is one of the guarantors of the 20-point peace proposal signed in October with the leadership of President Trump, along with Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. Qatar and Turkey are a huge problem. Turkey is still working intensively to get its army to join the international force to oversee the ceasefire in Gaza. I want you to imagine that. Qatar and Turkey in Gaza as part of the Trump peace plan. To me, this is unbelievable. And then you look at Daniel chapter 11. And then you also look at Acts chapter 17. That doesn't address Israel specifically in Acts chapter 17, but it tells of the time that is coming, which refers back to Daniel chapter 9, 10, 11, and 12 of this future judgment that is going to come upon the land of the whole world, but Israel is going to be at the epicenter of all of it. Okay, moving on from there as we look at this, check this out. Next article, Turkey ready to send troops to Gaza, says top diplomat. And then what else do we have? This is out of All Israel News. UAE voices concern over role of Qatar and Turkey in Gaza. Lack of clear framework for international security force. I look at this and go, no kidding, that's exactly what we see taking place. Where's all of this going to go? We know biblically where all of it's going to go, but as we look at these things, the concerns that we have right now, the pressure is increasing against the land of Israel. People are turning against the Jews. I've never seen anti-Semitism the way that it is right now. It's exploding everywhere. It's not just Tucker Carlson's and the Candace Owens and the Nick Fuentes. Anti-Semitism is exploding everywhere. Friends, as we see all of these dynamics taking place, it is a reminder that everything is going the way that the Bible tells us it's going to. But here's the deal. When we think of what is the purpose of the tribulation period that's coming, again, God says in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, 70 weeks are determined for your people, for your holy city. What is the word determined that's used there? Comes from the Hebrew word settled. God says it's settled. You cannot change it. The 70th week of Daniel must happen. That 7-year period. What for? Well, the Bible also tells us what for. To finish the transgression. That is the rebellion of mankind, the Gentile world and the Jews, the rebellion of the Jews against God, the rebellion of all man against God. But the Bible also teaches that Israel is going to be brought through the fire. So we see the anti-Semitism increasing. Again, Zechariah chapter 12, all of the world is going to be turned against Jerusalem and against the Jews. And we see this increasing exponentially. But to finish the transgression, to finish the rebellion, God, the purpose of the tribulation period ultimately is to judge all sin and also to make an end of all sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness. So this is going to come. And this ultimately is about our redemption, the redemption of the people of Israel, and God judging all sin and judging mankind. And then he also says here to seal up vision and prophecy. In other words, all prophecy will be fulfilled. It's going to be done. People push back all the time and say, why do you even talk about Bible prophecy? That's just something that needs to be ignored. It's just all allegorical or something like that. Not according to God. And then God says this, Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, the last thing, and to anoint the most holy. What is that? That is Jesus coming back, the anointed one, ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. Listen, God bless you guys. Thank you for joining me back today for my first time back here. Again, check it out. If you haven't already, my JNS Jewish News Syndicate interview from Jerusalem at the JNS studio that we posted earlier today, tomorrow with Hillel Newman from the Old City in Jerusalem. God bless you guys.